Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football from a couple of Americans' perspectives. This week, we'll be giving a preview of Arsenal's season, now only mere days away. How you doing, Keith?
Good evening, Dove, and a happy new year to you. The new season is upon us.
Okay, so you said that last episode, and I thought that's what you meant, but thank you for confirming.
What else would I mean? How else do you keep time except through the football, which never ends?
There's a lot of things that I don't know about the Commonwealth. There's a lot of known unknowns and even more unknown unknowns, I have a feeling. So.
Well, no, this is just the new it's the new season. It's the new year. I mean, right. Yeah.
Could For all January, I know, it could be like an ancient Celtic tradition or something. I don't know.
Nah.
No. All right.
Look, everyone else does January. We're going to do something a little different. January's done. It's played out.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who I found out, I think he shares a birthday with me, but through some random turn of events, he decided to celebrate his birthday like over the summer instead of February. He just started telling people like his half birthday or something like that. I think his family has a lot of birthdays around then, so he changed it on Facebook or something, and so now everybody just like wishes him happy birthday on this one random day a year, the same day every year, but this one day that is not his birthday.
Is that an Alice in Wonderland joke? Is it the unbirthday?
Very merry unbirthday, that is, but that's like all 364 days that aren't your birthday. They celebrate.
Oh yeah, right. The unbirthday. Yeah. That's it. The unbirthday. Or the old Christmas in July, even though it's not in August.
Yep. So
this has been Calendar U. Thanks everyone for joining.
Calendar Man. Now we're getting into Batman supervillains in the deep bench there. So, before we get into our proper topics for this week, and before we diverge any further off the beaten path there, we just wanted to kind of tell the origin story of the show a little bit. We didn't really do this last year, and this is the beginning of our third season now. And hopefully, a lot of you who are listening now have not been listening the whole time. We want to always be spreading the word and getting new viewers, new listeners who we didn't even have viewers at the beginning of our first season because we started off as an audio only podcast. But basically, so we'll do this like kind of oral history style. I will begin telling the story and jump in at any point. Signal with your hands if I'm not hearing you. And we'll tell this. So you and I have been friends dating back to middle school, like for a long time.
That was suddenly a long time ago.
Yeah, really. You are a professor, therefore, at least until this year, you largely had summers almost entirely off and would travel a lot. 1 year when you were on one of your road trips visiting up to New York, you no longer live in the New York area, you live in Texas. You were up here visiting, and I had watched the first season of Ted Lasso and had mentioned it to you, and I did not know at the time just how much that was going to be up your alley. But you expressed an interest. I had Apple TV Plus. You did not at that point in time have Apple TV Plus. And we binged that whole, I think only the first season was out at that point, or did we do the first two seasons? I think it was, Yeah,
it was back when they only had half-hour long episodes.
Yeah, exactly. The good old days. So we watched the whole first season together, and you were kind of remarking on certain things that were particularly funny to you, knowing things about the Premier League I knew nothing. Like Ted Lasso was essentially my introduction to the Premier League and soccer as a grown-up in general. I hadn't really thought about soccer at all since I was a kid, aside from, I think at that point I'd been already coaching my son a little bit, but he was like 5 years old, 4 years old or something. So even then, like, you know, my experience coaching and knowledge I'd gained from coaching was extremely limited at that point. So we watched that together. We shared that experience together. And you had mentioned, you know, by the way, this is a few weeks after you'd returned and you returned home, you had said something like, by the way, there's this documentary on Amazon talking about the entire 22-23 season of Arsenal. I believe it was.
That was it. 22. No,
21, 22.
22, yes.
Yeah, 22, 23 was this season I'm wearing the jersey from. That was the first season that we did the show together. So it was a 21, 22 season. That's
a lot of 20s.
Documentary was called, what was it?
All or Nothing.
All or Nothing. Yes, thank you. So All or Nothing, Arsenal, and it went into the entire season, showing behind the scenes. That worked out perfectly. I was able to watch that, and you told me to just get Peacock. The games are on Peacock, right? So I watched the documentary, and I felt like I had an in to this team. I knew what was going on a little bit, and I felt prepared enough to start watching and not feel completely lost. And I think, if I remember right, I didn't tell you at first that I'd done this. I think I watched the documentary without telling you. I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes, I believe, without telling you, and said, okay, hey, I've caught up a little bit. I'd love to talk to you about it. What do you think? This might be a fun topic for a podcast. I've been looking for something to podcast about for a while. I listened to a bunch and wanted to do that. I have a background in video and audio production. This was something that I'd wanted to do, and I thought that would be a good topic to do with you. So we started the first show. We didn't know what we were going to call it. I learned during that first show what a Gooner is. That was a term that I did not know before then. That was one of the earliest things I learned about Arsenal. And I thought, oh, Gooner U, that seems like that might be a fun topic or title for the show, given your educational background, the idea that you're bringing me up to speed on soccer and Arsenal. I thought that would be good. And we kind of took it from there. And we brought in, so as our recording tools evolve, now we're using Zencastr, and I think it was once we'd started that we first started seeing video of each other. Our first couple episodes, we used some ad hoc tools and kind of had a little bit of a rough time, and once we started using some better production tools, that gave us streaming video in addition to audio. We did that for a while, just watching each other, and I started thinking, you know what? Maybe we could try editing the video together a little bit, and I could try posting that. And that's how our YouTube channel kind of grew out of the audio only show. And, you know, we've continued as I get better and I am able to take less time doing certain things that used to take more time. I'm able to take that time I used to spend and do things like shorts and other things that we're doing now. And you know, we've branched out. We do film studies episodes sometimes where we talk about soccer related movies. We've got a long list. It's a public list on my Letterboxd profile if anyone ever wants to find that. And it's a public list. You never know what we're going to talk about until we drop the episode. And there's enough of them that it'll keep us busy for a while. And once we exhaust that list, we'll have to revisit if we continue that with general sports movies or if we just end that series. But you and I have always bonded over pop culture movies in particular. Star Wars was a big early thing for us, and more recently Marvel and things like that. So that was a natural progression of the show. So.
Yeah, that roughly comports with how I remember it all happening. That sounds about right, mostly. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, sort of bringing you in to the world. I mean, Arsenal is an entry point to the larger world of the sport. Obviously, heavy emphasis on Arsenal, as it should be. But, you know, so a little bit more about my background in all this, which, as you said, is a little more extensive. You know, it started following the sport when I started playing it as a younger child, and then particularly in 1994, which was when the World Cup was in the U.S.
Right.
Which, again, also a long time ago, suddenly. And so I've been a follower of the U.S. national team for some time. And now, gosh, that was back in college. Well, I'll date it exactly, but as in college, I did study abroad in London. And through my own fandom of the sport and some of the work of my fellow study abroad colleagues, I guess we'd call them, they were fans of Arsenal, in particular Dennis Bergkamp. And we were in Islington, of all places. So it's where our flats were. We were in that section of London. And so you start following Arsenal. Well, as it turns out, that's also was the spring, the January to May, that Arsenal went to the Champions League final. And so I'll always have Paris. An incredible run to the final that was marred by the actual final itself. They lost to Barcelona. We don't have to talk anymore about that. But since then, of course, I'm following Arsenal. As you mentioned, I live in Texas. I live in Houston, Texas. Since moved here, I've become a regular with the Houston Gooners. Whose koozie I'm using this evening, by the way. that.
Nice.
It's backwards. I can see on the video, but that's okay.
Your preview. It'll come out okay in post.
Oh, there we go. Okay, right. So I've been going to the games with them for since I've been here, which is at least close to, this is my 9th season. It'll be my 9th season with the Gooners. And obviously following Arsenal for a number of years before that. It's been an interesting ride, which presumably I think gives me a slightly different perspective on some of the things we are seeing in this, the most successful set of Arsenal seasons, certainly since I've been following the team, and arguably since the last 20 years, which is just a little longer than I've been following the team. So,
right.
Yeah. So
that is one big difference. So for any newer viewers or listeners, yeah, like the season I came in, we finished second in the league for the first time in a long, long time. And then we did it again last year. So my expectations for the team are sometimes a little bit different and tempered by the very exceptional nature of the most recent couple seasons.
You are the good luck charm, and we'll have to watch until we win something. I'm just telling you right now, you've been suckered in. I'm not going to let you quit. But you're not a quitter, so I'm not worried about it. But yeah, and now not only do I have you making jokes about the Premier League, but also you're now watching soccer in the Olympics, which not even like hardcore fans do sometimes. So well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So I watched 1 1/8, 1 1/4 or so matches of Olympic soccer. I have watched a bunch of other, and credit to you for this also. Like, I hadn't watched like any Olympics for 20 or more years since I was a kid, right? I am watching random Olympic stuff too, in addition to soccer. So that is part of my journey here. But I did watch like 1 1/8 or so matches of the women's national team. I saw the ending of the first half of the semifinal match against, oh God, I can't remember who it was.
That was Germany, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that might have been.
Yeah, it was Germany.
Okay.
I didn't actually see any of that one.
So I saw a little bit of it. The one thing I happened to catch it because I was in a waiting room waiting for someone, and it was on. Like I was sitting with the TV up above my head, but there was a reflection off of a surface in front of me, and I'd been kind of keeping a rough eye on what sports were on, and I could tell it was soccer through this reflection. It's like through a window. It wasn't like a mirror or anything. I was like, oh, let me go to a different seat and watch that a little bit. But the one thing I wanted to tell you about that was hilarious. I don't know if you watched that whole match or if you remember this, but the first half, you hit the 45-minute mark on the clock, and I'm thinking, okay, how much stoppage time is there going to be? 3 seconds go by, and the ref blows the whistle. I don't know if I've ever seen 0 stoppage time before.
It happens.
It would make sense, like in a women's game where it's not as physical, where they're not getting knocked around. The whistle isn't getting blown as much from what I'd seen there. No goals were scored, things like that. Like, it made sense. It was just like, whoa, there isn't even like 1 minute. I've seen 1 minute before in men's professional matches, but
yeah, you'll see that now and again. They'll just blow it dead at the half. Usually it means the half was kind of boring and nothing happened. That's only more interesting because I saw a little bit more in the Olympics. Maybe it was more on the men's side, but I mean the women too. They had a lot of the water breaks because of the heat in the summer in France. But it did feel like they were getting a little bit closer to the World Cup added time, which makes sense. FIFA runs the tournament, so it probably would have been resembled more of the World Cup in that way. Semi-automated offsides coming to the Premier League in October for some reason, but that's fine. That's fine. Better than
probably
not.
Testing it out in August and September, but yeah.
Yes, because it's never been tested before, except in the last World Cup, in the Olympics, in the Champions League. It's fine.
Well, I will say, like, each implementation is different, and even though it's like they're imposing the same idea, I'm sure there are different particular technologies and calibrations for each stadium or whatever else. That as someone who's in technology for a profession like that doesn't necessarily surprise me. Like that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's just like a thing I have about let's just partway through the season, let's just have different rules. There are worse examples of this in other sports that I could point to, but we don't need to go into that. Yeah, you're watching Olympic women's soccer, which shout out you to Spain boys. I can't really call them men because they're all under 23, but the Spain,
Right.
which is that and the European Championship, so it's good to be the Spanish male teams currently, and then of course shout out to USA, the best team in the world is back on top where they belong.
Yeah, so
on the women's side.
The final one, I had a couple questions. So I did watch the entire final on replay, but I didn't know the results, so it was fun. But a couple questions about that. So first of all, you mentioned the hydration breaks. What were they doing that for the men and the women, or were they treating the women more gently? Okay,
no, that was something that was instituted. I want to say, I believe it was really instituted when they did the World Cup in Brazil, which was back in 2014, because it's really hot in Brazil in the summertime.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask, how hot is it in Paris this time of year? Like, is it really hot enough to warrant it?
It can be, and a lot of it's calculated, so it has to do with the air temperature and the humidity as well.
Right.
And they played some of those games. They weren't all in Paris. A lot of the games were across France. Now the final was at the Parc des Princes in Paris, but like the US played both men and women ended up playing their group games in Marseille. Their games played in Nice, Saint-Étienne, a couple other places. So, but yeah, it has to do with the air temperature, the humidity, and things like that. So it's calculated basically to say, hey, if this is the air temperature at like 25 minutes, we're taking a break. And that is, the clock doesn't stop, but that is time that is added on in summertime. It's usually like a minute or two. Everyone kind of pauses, everyone just downs a bunch of water. And that's exactly what it says. It's a water break.
Well, but the coach is yelling things at them too. Like it is like, like another a coaching opportunity, a strategy session, it does change things.
They were used also in when the Premier League restarted after the COVID break, so they played in the summer and they did use them. Arteta in particular was famous for using those as what we would call teachable moments, as a chance to impart some particular wisdom. Also, the part where they're playing in empty stadiums, so he could shout at them, whatever. You could hear the coaches a lot and the managers, because of course the stadium is empty. There's nothing. There's nothing to absorb that sound, and so everything echoes off. And you could hear some. I didn't hear anything like risque or obscene, but you could hear. It was interesting. I mean, granted, a lot of what they're saying is not terribly complicated because you can't shout out complicated instructions. A lot of it is, push up, faster, faster. It's not. It's not the most complex instruction at that point.
Yeah, I mean, so what they teach us from U.S. soccer coach training is you want to focus on keywords, and this is something that you would do in training, but if you have the vocabulary of these keywords from training, you would use them in games also. Like if you say push up, they know what that means because you've worked on drills with that, and they're going to remember that that's what you're telling them to do at that point. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. That it's too bad I missed that. That would have been fascinating, being able to watch in the empty stadium and hear everything. That's
it was weird, especially when you realize how conditioned you are. Like I said, I've been watching for years, and I've watched a number of other sports, and you're conditioned, of course, to that sort of that low buzz that's always in the crowd, even when when nothing's really happening. There's that kind of low buzz that you get from just a crowd of people. And it was just, especially the first couple of games, like I think the German league started first, and those first couple of games you kind of watched, firstly because there was nothing else on, and you watch it, and it was a little eerie at first, took a little, and then they started doing fake noise, like at least over the broadcast, which was more comforting than I thought it would be, because it was weird to not have that low din. But yeah, then of course they score, and you look up and the stands are just empty, and so
right, huh?
What a strange time that was.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so bringing it back to the Olympics. So yeah, so I watched the whole final. The one thing that I also wanted to check with you on, so they, like you mentioned, they're using the semi-automated offside referee, and I was watching with my mom, who she has watched some soccer sometimes. She hasn't watched as much as my dad has, and therefore hasn't really picked up things like the offside rule, which I think I did successfully and succinctly explain to her to the point where she understood it. So, I'm getting good at that. No condiments were injured in the course of that instruction.
That feels like it should be the final exam here. Explain offside to someone else. Go.
Yeah, right. So basically, the only goal of the match, the winning goal. So that when she scored, I did not applaud. I did not cheer because that looked so likely to have been an offside pass. And even when they showed it, and they'd done this a couple times, like especially with the goal that Brazil did score that ended up getting called back due to offside. It's like, I don't know if maybe we must not have been seeing the same feed that the VAR was using, because it's like they were pausing it at the wrong point or something. And when they showed it a different time, it looked different. And I don't know if they were using a different camera angle or if it was just pausing it like one frame later, like after the foot made contact with the ball or something. But like it definitely looked offside to me. And even in replay, it looked offside to me.
Yeah, so, there's a couple things going on there. One, the cameras we see is like we talked about the World Cup, it's a single international feed. And so, like, much as NBC wants to, they have zero control over what's being shown on television. It is the IOC controls all of that, which is, of course, why they had no useful replays throughout the tournament. It was mostly just, like, random crowd shots.
Yeah.
FIFA's a little better about during the World Cup, but this wasn't great. But no, so I think part of the confusion stems from, as I saw it, so it's Valerie Swanson, who was the player who scored the goal and receives the pass. She's onside, but one of the other forwards is actually in an offside position, and the ball kind of comes toward her, but if you watch, she steps off it. She never touches it. Swanson comes in, picks it up, and ultimately scores. And that, I think, is where the confusion is, because she never touches it. The goal is onside. Swanson is, and I saw one replay. It's close, but she's clearly onside when that pass is played. And then because the other player looked like she was running onto the ball, and I'm blanking on who it was, she looked like but she pulls off and doesn't touch it. So once I sort of saw the goal and yes, goal. And then they were talking about the offside. And as soon as I saw the replay, I was like, nope, she never touches it. That the lead player never touches it. And they're far enough away from the goal. There was one, I forget where it was, might have been, I think it might have been maybe one of because the U.S. had a goal, at least one, maybe two goals called back. And it might have been there where the player doesn't touch the ball, who's in the offside position doesn't touch the ball, but it's so close to the goal that the interpretation is they interfered with the keeper's positioning or what have you. That, and where they received this pass came from was much closer to midfield. It's way too far away. Swanson gets a good run on the ball before she takes the shot, so that's not going to apply here.
Right. I remember seeing Arsenal matches where, it was a player who doesn't touch the ball, but close enough to goal. He has an impact on what unfolded even without directly touching the ball. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. So.
Cool. But so no, it's good. We brought home a gold there. One of many golds that Team USA has won. Now the Olympics closing ceremony was yesterday as we record. We're recording on Monday, August 12th. So it was fun. I watched some diving, archery, some pistol shooting, breakdancing. Did you catch any of those?
I did see a little of the breaking, which was interesting. Actually, I got really into the first week of the games, really into fencing. Every Olympics, there's I love the Olympics, awesome. But there's always one of random sport that it just sort of grabs you, and I'm just fascinated by this thing. It was archery a couple of years ago, and
the archery was fascinating. That was really fun to watch.
Yeah, the archery is neat to watch, and then. Yeah, this time around was fencing, and then of course watched a lot of the basketball and a couple. That was the other.
Finals. I watched the men's final for basketball too.
Yeah, a couple of great finals wins. But anyway, this is not an Olympics podcast. This is an Arsenal show, and we do need to talk about Arsenal, don't we?
I think we should. So the time is right. Where would you like to begin? I want to talk about some transfers.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. So as we've talked about, we're sort of bringing you into this not just the sport itself, but the broader culture that surrounds the conversation on sports. And so it's time for a season preview. If I was more talented, there'd be graphics or something as we did this. You don't worry about that. But this would be season preview time. And season previews do a bunch of different things traditionally in our meta-analysis. One thing they always do is the in and out of players, right? Who's new? What's new about the roster of the players we're looking at? There hasn't been a great deal of transfer activity this summer, certainly on the incoming variety for Arsenal, but also for a lot of other clubs. Now, part of that was European Championships, Copa America, even the Olympics to a certain extent. Like, that's a lot of tournaments going on, and players generally don't like to make moves during tournaments. Now, it used to be, see, here's where the world's been changing. It used to be you'd see a lot of movement in the immediate aftermath of a tournament because somebody would have a great tournament that no player no one had ever heard of, and all of a sudden all the big clubs are lining up and like, here, we'll take him, we'll pay for him, we'll do this, all that. Increasingly, because so much of the sport is now available video-wise online, there's so much more advanced scouting. It doesn't really, the idea of a surprising player doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, I still remember Arsenal signing Andrei Arshavin in large part because of his performance in the European Championships with Russia. And then they signed him. They tried to sign him after that in the summer. It fell through, so they signed him in January. He was a fun player for a little while there. So for Arsenal, for incomings, only two real incomings, and one of them doesn't really feel like it. That's David Raya. That was the first transfer. His loan became permanent. Right. We bought him officially, so Raya officially, and then shortly while Arsenal was in the US on preseason tour, they finalized a deal that had been hanging out there for a while. Riccardo Calafiori, an Italian defender from Bologna, who's now for Arsenal. So welcome, Calafiori. It is very interesting. He had a nice European Championships with Italy, even though Italy wasn't very good in the Euros. But he had a nice tournament. He's had a good run with Bologna. It is unusual to see an Italian player leave Italy. Typically, if they're any good, they'll wind up going to one of the Milan clubs or Juventus. But no, he comes to Arsenal, so that'll be exciting. A nice an Italian.
I know you mentioned that with Jorginho also, that the Italians don't tend to leave Italy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. With Jorginho, we now have two Italians on the roster, which is an interesting thing. There were some loans. A lot of the movements have been outgoing. And a lot of this isn't terribly surprising, but it's sort of interesting to see. Officially, just even though we haven't seen them for a while, loans out, which are probably almost certainly a precurrence to them being sold officially. Marquinhos, young winger, had a goal in the Europa League. Is on loan at Fluminense, which is in Brazil.
Seeing that written, it looks like a nasal spray or something. Fluminense. Yeah,
it's actually they're actually arch rivals with the Brazilian club Flamengo, which creates a rivalry which has the delightful name of Fla-Flu. I'm not making that up.
Okay.
Albert Sambi Lokanga is on loan at Sevilla, which looks like it's probably going to end up being. Looks like a place that he'll wind up permanently. And then Nuno Tavares is on loan to Lazio in Italy. So a few names you may recognize from that from in your time here with the club. Otherwise, we have a few more players permanently leaving or potentially outgoings as well. So Cedric Suarez and Mohamed El Neni, fare thee well. Both of them, their contracts ended. Cedric is, as far as I know, currently without a club. He his career might be officially over or unofficially over. Mohamed El Neni was signed by a club in the United Arab Emirates called Al Jazeera, no connection to, and a different spelling from the Arabic television network. But apparently is owned by the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi, who is also the guy who owns, among other clubs, Manchester City. So make of that what you will. Speaking of fare thee wells, Emil Smith-Rowe officially left for Fulham. This is a tough one. You know, it was Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe. You know, he was an academy kid, but injuries robbed him, and he just never really seemed to work his way back in the lineup. And I hope Fulham works out for him. We got a fair bit of money for him too, which is always nice.
Yeah.
So, I hope it works out for him at Fulham, at least whenever they play City, not so much us, but good luck to you, Emil Smith Rowe. Good servant to the club. A Gooner from very young age. So, a gunner from a very young age. It wasn't just a fan, but
both.
Both. Other than that, we have a couple of potential outgoings. Eddie Nketiah, the Arsenal has been in protracted negotiations with Marseille about, as I understand it, it is a loan with an obligation to buy. So official, for bookkeeping purposes, he'll be loaned there for a season. And then like we had with Raya, well, I think actually Raya was technically an option to buy, which we were always going to do. But I think in the case of Nketiah, what's being negotiated is an obligation, or maybe not. Who knows? These negotiations are weird. A lot of it has to do, as I understand it, with not just like the money being paid out, but how the money is paid out. Is it in lump sum? Is it in installments? Are there other bits like a sell-on clause? So if Marseille sells him down the line, how much of that money goes back to Arsenal? Things like that. So there's a lot of things that can sort of complicate a transfer, but that is ongoing and seems likely to happen. Other than that, Reece Nelson still on the roster, probably for his own sake, should wind up somewhere else. He has the unenviable task of being Bukayo Saka's backup, which means he'll never play, or at least hopefully he'll never play. But that seems like theoretically he could fill a role, but you think for the case of his career, he really ought to play games regularly, which is not going to happen as much here, unfortunately for him. So, I would be surprised if he is still here with us when the window closes. Carl Hain. Apparently it's not pronounced Tyne. Everyone's saying it wrong. The third string keeper had his contract extended, but the conversation was that he would likely go out on loan. And then Aaron Ramsdale is still back as the number 2, but has every reason to believe he wants to be a number 1 keeper somewhere. It's just not going to happen here. So wouldn't surprise to see him get sold between now and the end of the window.
So Ramsdale is too good to keep as a second, and Hain is not good enough to be our third. Is that where that? He's not good enough to be. He's not. The sound of it, he's not good enough to be the second. Okay.
If he was good enough to be the backup, then he would just be the backup. But he's young enough that he's going to want real playing time, which is not necessarily going to happen here. And backup keeper is one of those that's not actually it's a relatively easy position to fill, because you can always find some older guy who is willing to sort of be that. You kind of understand. I mean, a younger guy like Haynes a little tougher, because as he's younger, he's going to want to play.
Right.
And going to want to get the game time. An older keeper might say that, look, I can hang on for a little bit longer by not playing.
Okay. That makes sense.
Or there are some guys you can find. As I understand, we were in conversations with the Wolves about a keeper, which was an interesting conversation in part because apparently we were bidding it sounded like ridiculously low amounts of money. I mean, the response to Wolves wasn't no. It was like, probably, but maybe a little more than that, I think.
Yeah.
It was Wolves. I don't but anyway, there was some talk. So I want to say it was Dan Bentley. I pulled up Wolves roster. Who was Dan Bentley we were talking about? There was some conversation about him. Other than that, some potential, not incomings. Well, it's not really an incoming. It'll feel like an incoming. Jurrien Timber, like a new signing, coming back from injury. We saw him in the last game of the season. He apparently has been nursing an injury in preseason, and the word from Arteta is soon he'll be back.
Okay.
Less good. Takahiro Tomiyasu apparently is also dealing with an injury, and the word from Arteta was weeks, which is less than good. So
that stings. Injured during international play?
I think it was somewhere during training during the training in the preseason, which leads us to the fact that there are still a couple weeks left in the transfer window until it closes at the end of August. I think we will probably need a keeper, since I expect the sense is still Ramsdale's getting sold. Chances are there's going to be another midfielder brought in. There have been conversations with Real Sociedad about Mika Marino, who was last seen scoring the winning goal for Spain in the European Championship. Or at least playing for Spain. I think he got the winning goal. Maybe he played for Spain and won the Euros with Spain. sounds like it's sort of like the negotiations with Marseille. Everybody wants it to happen, and they just need to make sure all the math works out for everybody.
Right.
He is also an attacking midfielder, sort of in the mold of a Kai Havertz, as I understand it. So perhaps there's room as well for a more defensive midfielder, or maybe we do roll with Thomas Partey and Jorginho again. Or, what role do we foresee for Declan Rice? There was talk about a forward. There were some rumors about Benjamin Sesko, young... Oh, gosh, I forget where he was from. Somewhere Central Eastern Europe. I'm totally blanking on it now. I want to say Austria, but apparently that's not right. But anyway, he decided he would stay with his club, and that happened even before the Euros. So presumably there are some potential options out there. You'll probably see, as usual, a flurry of movement right before the deadline, because everyone crashes deadlines, not just college students. And yeah, so not too many ins, potentially a few more, a handful of outs, but a lot of guys who are sort of on the edges of the roster. The central part of the roster is still relatively stable for now, at least. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the update. That's fascinating. I can't wait for it to start, and it will soon on Saturday. So that's all happening soon. So meanwhile, before we get into the predictions section of the show, I want to thank Zencastr. So longtime viewers, longtime listeners will know that Zencastr is what we use to record every episode. And of course, that is because it's so easy. It is super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. You just log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. You can record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. It is an all-in-one solution, so if you thought about podcasting before and you gave up thinking you needed a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and then distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. And of course, with Zencastr, you can sound your best. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth, like butter. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording, and it removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise, all with the click of a button. So if that sounds good to you, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Gooner, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experience as we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time for you to share your story. So, do we want to go over what the prediction categories are up front, or do them one at a time?
Yeah, so this is the other fun part of a preview, which is we do predictions. All predictions wrong or your money back. So please do not use these for any sort of fiscal planning or retirement planning or anything of that sort. But yeah, it's the beginning of the season, and even though we will be wrong about so many different things, it's sort of an interesting it's a nice little temperature check for everybody, what we're thinking, how we're feeling coming into the season. So what we've got counting our boxes here, 7 categories, which have multiple parts to them, but 7 categories. Really quickly, first we're going to have our prediction for the leading scorer on the season, who's going to finish with the most goals. Yep. We'll then lodge a prediction on the opening day lineup, who are going to be the 11 that Arteta starts, which I think is going to be informed a little bit by some of what we talked about in the previous section on transfers. This is an interesting one. I'm curious to see how this plays out. We're going to talk about stock falling and stock rising. Who is the player in the terms of, we'll say, stock falling? This one feels a little more negative, but who's the player that we see now who seems important, who perhaps over the course of the season may be reduced in importance? I'm thinking perhaps last year, maybe a Gabriel Martinelli, perhaps by the end of the season, had a difficult time getting on the field, whereas at the beginning of the season, couldn't imagine a team without him. By a similar token, more optimistically, we'll do stock rising. Who's this year's Kai Havertz, a player at the start who, well, Havertz doesn't really count because he wasn't on the roster when the season began. But, who's the player who early on we're not really sure about till at the end of the season feels indispensable? How could we play without this guy? Then, of course, standings predictions. We'll pick the 4 teams in the top 4 who are going to the Champions League next year, the 3 teams in the bottom who are going to the championship next year, and then, of course, assuming we haven't given it away already, our picks for the champions, who's walking away with the big trophy. Well, I guess it's the big English trophy, I suppose. The big one, the Champions League, is still, it's a different one altogether.
I'm calling an audible here. I think we'll do the bottom three first. Then we'll do the top like fourth, third, and second, and then the number one.
Oh, okay.
Let's try and be a little sane about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. There's a little peek behind the curtain of the show getting worked. Doug does something, I just say, okay.
Yeah.
But I'll take the lead on this one. I'll let you start. Who's going to be your leading scorer? Who's going to walk away, you think, with the most goals this season? And you don't need to predict numbers, by the way. I'm awful at numbers, and so I'm not going to make you do it. I won't.
Yeah. It's tough to say, especially with Arsenal, right? Like, we are a team that spreads the goals around so much. It's hard to say who the one person that scores the most could be. I think in the running, clearly you would have Saka, Declan Rice, I'm thinking, Kai Havertz possibly. Those are kind of maybe my short list. Maybe Odegaard could be in that list. I'm going to say Declan Rice.
Rice? Okay.
I think it's unlikely. I think I want him to be the lead scorer, maybe. I don't think he's actually, given his track record from last season, which he did great, but goal scoring wasn't his main thing. I'm hoping that he can go in that direction more, because I think when he does put his foot to the ball and try and get in the goal, I think he does well a lot of the time. So see how that goes.
Well, one thing we should have done at the beginning, I feel a little unfair. We should point out Bukayo Saka was the leading scorer on the team last year, both in the Premier League. He scored 16 goals, had 20 over the course of the whole season in all competitions, and he was the leading scorer for both of them. I'm not going to pick Saka, even though I just said and did that to you. I am actually going to go, I think, with Gabriel Jesus.
Okay.
I think he is a guy who has been... I still remember that first half of the season before the World Cup. That was 22, where I thought he was having an excellent season. I think the injury and some of the ways he's come back have really sort of slowed him down. I'm going to say Gabriel Jesus. He had 8 goals in all competition last year, 4 in the Premier League, 4 in the Champions League. But I think he's going to be a bigger piece for us this year, healthy. He didn't go to Brazil for the Copa America. I think he's a guy who's going to step in and have a big season for us.
Yeah, good pick. I think probably way more likely than Declan Rice. So yeah.
I mean, I would say that too, but hey, you know what? I'm not here to judge. I'm not going to judge that.
As with so many things on the show, as the words are coming out of my mouth, and I take a second thought of it, you're like, yeah, I know how wrong I can be sometimes, but yeah, it's okay. So
we should add Declan Rice had 7 goals last season, all in the Premier League.
So yeah, that's actually higher than I thought it was. So yeah, it's some educated wishing.
Yeah.
All right, so opening day lineup. Do you want to maybe take turns listing out like a couple at a time who's going to be in our lineup?
Well, I mean, let's just do it in the back. Well, first off, I think we can both agree keeper is going to be David Raya, right? I think we both. Yes. Okay. After that, I mean, Arsenal typically lines up in the 4-3-3, so 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 in the forward line. Yep. I'll throw out my defense. I think it'll be the same one we closed last season with. I think it'll be, well, not entirely, because it'll be left to right, Zinchenko, Gabriel Saliba, and Ben White. I think we'll see again. How about you in the back line?
And let's see if I... Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think that there really should be... I mean, I guess the wild card, would be Timber. We didn't have the chance to see him, really, last year. I don't think Kivior is going to step up and take a significant role. Calafiori, we have no idea how that's going to work out. So just to change things up a little bit, I'm going to say maybe Timber instead of Zinchenko as a starter. Because Zinchenko doesn't always start all the time, and we did start noticing with him when he started more, he started not necessarily doing as well when he was a frequent starter. So let's say Timber is who will be starting instead of him. I think other than that, I think Gabriel, Saliba, and White. I think those are solid calls. Okay.
How about, we'll just alternate here. How about for the midfield? Who do you think will be the 3 in the midfield?
Okay, so looking at the list of midfielders, okay, so obviously Odegaard. I don't think there's any getting around Odegaard being a starter. I think Rice has definitely earned his place. What formation are we thinking? Is it like 4-4-3?
4-3-3. So four defenders, three midfielders. And again, these are flexible things. Arteta talks about having like 50 formations in a game,
Right.
which he just refers to the different shapes they're developing.
Right.
But roughly three in the mid. Three for us. Typically you'll see Arsenal line up as 4 in the back, 3 in the midfield, 3 on the forward line.
Yeah, so I don't see Vieira playing much more, if at all more, than he did last season. So I think like Odegaard, Rice, and Havertz are kind of our core as far as that, like that. Well, I guess if we're doing 4-3-3, I guess I'll probably have to leave it at that. It'll be interesting to see Partey versus Jorginho, like who ends up coming in more. But I think Odegaard, Rice, and Havertz have been really solid for us, and I think should continue to be.
All right. I mean, I'm definitely Odegaard and Rice. I think are definitely clear starters. I'm going to punt on this. I actually think you're going to see. If I had to predict, I actually bet we're going to go with. I just played. I think you'll see Thomas Partey at least for the first game. I wonder because I do think Arteta likes Partey. I think he likes the things he can do. Partey as the deep lying defensive midfielder allows Declan Rice to push forward a bit more, which is I think perhaps more what he wants him to do. So at least I think in the early part of the season, that's what we'll see. But I think that also leads a little bit into the forward line for me. I think you're going to see Saka out on the right. I think you're going to see Kai Havertz on the field, but as that false 9 position. I think he'll be up top. And I think you'll see Gabriel Jesus out wide. We saw on the left, we saw a lot of Martinelli and Trossard there last season. But I'm going to say it'll be left to right, Jesus, Havertz, and Saka.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. And so let me see, looking at the lineup. So I can't bear to not have Martinelli in the starting lineup. And I'm realizing as we're almost at the end, I was like, oh, wait, opening day lineup. I've been thinking of this as like a season long, like maybe who would be the statistical like starting 11, not realizing we're specifically talking about the opening day. So my bad on that. But okay, so I'm going to continue in the vein that I had been in. So I'd say clearly Saka, like, you know, he starts every game that he's healthy, and he's healthy almost every game. Let's say Martinelli, and then Jesus makes sense. But I like Trossard, and I think that he will have a big role this season. I think he's really, like Rice, kind of proved his worth very much last season, especially in the stretch where we were getting a little thin. So I think that I would like to see him. We probably will see Jesus, but again, kind of, you know, educated wishing, maybe Trossard. So,
I mean, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. I think the one thing your lineup is missing would be that central player in the attack. Now, I mean, we always think about Saka on the right. I mean, the idea of Saka playing in the middle it's an idea that gets thrown out there now and again, and he probably could. But again, he's really good.
Yeah, that wasn't necessarily what I was thinking. Like, I think Saka would probably stay on the right where he does so well. I would keep him there. We have seen before Trossard on the left and Martinelli in the middle, or vice versa.
True.
We've seen them both when we've seen them both on the field together. That is what we've seen in the past. So, but yeah, I think overall it probably does make more sense to have Jesus. But yeah, here we are.
No, I mean, yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out in a couple days. And again, it's the opening day lineup, as we all know. The opening day lineup and sort of the preferred 11, as it were, is going to be. There is going to be dramatically different. There's no way that's going to happen, which I think leads us a little bit to this question of stock falling.
Yeah.
Player we'll see as important now and perhaps maybe not so much by the end of the season. Do you want to start with this, or do you want me to start?
I'll let you start while I think about it a little bit more.
Okay. I am going to go. This is probably going to be my most controversial pick, but I'll explain. I might actually say Ben White. Now, let me lead off by saying I like Ben White. He's a good player. He's been good He did really well on the right side. He, Odegaard, and Saka are as dangerous an attacking group as you're going to get, especially on that flank. But I wonder, with the addition of the additional defenders, and really I'm thinking of Calafiore and Timber, I wonder if you start, if Arteta could really have his preferred back line. I mean, I think Saliba is obviously on it. I wonder if maybe it's Timber on the right. Now, maybe that pushes Ben White into the middle and Gabriel is the one who becomes surplus, but it's so hard for me to break up what is the, what is the best center back pairing in the league, honestly. I wonder maybe if White's the player who by the end of the year maybe feels a little bit more like the odd man out. Now, saying that, ideally we're going to be going deep in 4 competitions, or at least 3. Fingers crossed on that one, which means I think we're going to see a lot of rotation on the back line. And that's the great thing about Calafiore and Timber as well, and Ben White also, and Tomiyasu too. Really everyone on the defense except Zinchenko, is that they can all rotate. They all can play center back, and a lot of them can actually play a little bit out wide. I wonder if we may even experiment with a back 3 at some points. But I wonder what that does. Does Ben White become as much of a must start by the middle of the end of the season as he is right now? Yeah. Still think he's a great player, still love him on the team, but I just wonder if there may be some shifting coming on the back that we're not seeing right now.
Yeah, completely agree. Ben White had occurred to me. So as I scrounge for another choice, I mean, I think as indicated when I was talking about the opening day lineup, I'm kind of thinking Partey has kind of been a little bit on the outs. And I know there was an injury and that injury took him out for a long time, but I almost kind of feel like that injury may have been what allowed us to flourish in other areas of our midfield. And I know he does a lot of great things for the club, and with all of our regular starters, let me just say, in case people think otherwise, I realize how valuable they all are. They've been there for a while. They're great. They're all great in their own unique ways. But I think Havertz and Rice and Jorginho, who are all new basically from the last year and a half, they've changed things up in the midfield a lot. And I could see maybe that there's less of a place for what Partey does in the midfield now. But
okay. I mean, honestly, I would say the biggest pushback you're going to get to that is not so much how dare you drop Partey. It's probably going to be more, hasn't he already fallen a little bit? I mean, we saw how little he played, and where he, and he did come back and play some towards the end of the season. And the general sense was it wasn't so great. Now he's still recovering from injury. Perhaps he was, I don't want to say rushed back, but maybe the summer, getting the summer some time off, maybe it was a little better for him as opposed to coming in the middle of a title chase. That might change some things.
That's true.
But that's enough negativity. Stock rising. Who's going to be the guy we can't stop talking about at the end of the season?
Well, do you want me to start, or you want to start?
Yeah, we'll keep flipping off. You start this one.
So I think the easiest pick that could either be wildly right or wildly wrong. Let's just go with the new guy, Calafiore. We have no idea. It could go very badly or very well. Hopefully we're talking about him like we're talking about Havertz or Rice or any of the other acquisitions from last season by this time next year. And hopefully that works out very well. So sure, why not?
I think the really cheeky answer here is to take someone like Rice, Odegaard, Saliba, or Saka and say, no, you think they're good now. Wait till you see what they're going to become. But I mean, we're talking about 4 nailed on starters, so that's not really a fair pick there. I'm kind of leaning towards, I guess I'd say Jesus. I think he's a little bit of a forgotten man. I picked him for the leading scorer. I think he's going to reestablish himself and remind us why he's a player we really wanted a couple of seasons ago, and that he becomes a guy who becomes much more of a fixture in the lineup as opposed to, now we're running and do we maybe start, does Jesus start? Does he fit? I think he's versatile. I think he can work his way in. There's been talk about the backup for Saka. Fabio Vieira has been tried out there a little bit in the preseason. I think Jesus is an interesting call for that because he can play out wide as well. He's very versatile as a forward player. We know he loves we know we know Arteta loves that versatility, and so I wonder if maybe Jesus that's an opportunity to get Jesus on the field more. Unless the argument is, I could make an argument for Rice or Saka from the perspective of they do have another gear to find. Rice, we talked about this last year, right? That he's a player who felt like he sometimes was still sort of learning his position, but now that he's been fully in place for a year, now he's going to really ascend to this greater plane. Or same with Saka, that he really does have another level. I'm going to say Jesus. I mean, who's going to make himself a much more of a starter, a consistent starter by the end of the year.
Okay, yeah, good call. I hope it works out that way. So, all right. So, bottom three, we're talking about the 24-25 relegation zone.
Yeah, who's going to finish at the bottom? So we'll say this. Last year, all three promoted teams were relegated, which is a rare occurrence. That does not actually happen as often as you would think. Having said that, we're picking three of them to go down. I think at least one of them will go down. And
And just so we're clear, I'm looking at the table as it is right now. They're what? Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton? Are those the three?
Ipswich Town, Leicester City, and Southampton are the three that came up. Right. I'm going to say Ipswich. Leicester and Southampton. Leicester, I think, is better. I think their relegation was a result of a lot of bad decisions kind of catching up with them. I think, though, they're overall on solid ground to stay up. Southampton, I'm a little less sure about, but I think they probably will. I guess I would say Ipswich is the one that goes. Looking around, I'm going to say Nottingham Forest. They probably should have been relegated last year or even the year before, and basically were avoided the fact because there were some really especially last year, some truly awful. Burnley and Sheffield were bad last year. And even Luton was pretty unspectacular, had some good moments, but was relatively unspectacular. So I think Forest, luck runs out this season. So for Ipswich, Forest. Oh, and then this last one's the one that's going to end up making me look stupid. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about Wolves. I just don't have a good feeling about them. I could be totally wrong. Wolves to me is kind of in that group that's in the middle. Like if they could put it all together and not really challenge for a European spot, but be sort of on the outskirts of that. But they could also kind of completely fall apart. I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about Wolves. You could make the argument about Crystal Palace, but I felt like they were better in the backstretch last year, so I feel like they're in a better shape to survive long term. So I'm going to go out on the limb and say it's Wolves that goes down, along with Ipswich and Nottingham Forest.
Okay. So this is one area where clearly your experience and just kind of knowing these teams kind of backwards and forwards, how they've done over the last however many years at this point, this helps inform your decisions. So mine are going to be kind of pulling straws a little bit. So right now I'm looking at the 24-25 table, which, everybody has 0 points and it's just,
it's an alphabet. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's funny about that is Tottenham is in the relegation zone. So I'll enjoy that until
I was about to say, just so we're clear, as fun as it would be, I can't let you say Spurs.
No,
I can't let you
as much as I was thinking about doing it to joke around. No, I can't retain any credibility while actually suggesting that they get relegated next year. It was funny. I saw someone while I was out shopping yesterday. They had a rooster crest on their shirt, and I was like, Tottenham fan, I should hit him with the car like he was crossing the road. I was joking that, not like I actually would. And I was like, oh no, wait, no, that's France, because they had the stars up above it like that was a France shirt. So I caught myself, and maybe I'd feel similarly for other reasons with a France jersey, but anyways, so no, I wouldn't say Tottenham seriously. Wolves, I was thinking Wolves is at the bottom of the table alphabetically, and I was actually considering of all of them from last season that didn't go down, I think they would possibly be in the running. For the other ones, I'm kind of going to have to just pull from the teams that I don't know that are moving up, which leaves two. Like Leicester, I do know. They were in the Premier League a couple seasons ago. I've seen them play. I'm going to say Ipswich and Southampton because I really don't know them, and we'll see how that serves me at the end of the season. So,
I mean, if you were to look at their rosters overall, you would probably look and say that the three promoted teams have the weakest rosters, which isn't a surprise. They were in a lower division the season before. But, it is rare that very rare that all three promoted teams will go down, and so it's hard to pick all three of them to go down. It happened last year, and that's not normal. So
right. Yep. So yeah. All right. So we're going to do a top four, but kind of focused on the number 4, 3, and 2 spots. So,
all right.
Take that one first. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is an interesting one. Who's going to wind up in the 4 spot? This is the tough one for me because I can see a lot of teams sort of in this mushy 4 to 7 range that you could talk me into a 4, getting into 4th.
And for last season, so it was us and City at the top, and then what was it? Liverpool and Villa ended up in the 3 and 4 spots,
right? So it was City was number 1, Arsenal 2, Liverpool 3, Villa was 4, then Spurs was 5th, Chelsea 6, Newcastle in 7th, and Manchester United in 8th.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I'm toying between 2 clubs. I'm going to say Chelsea. They were playing better in the second half. A lot of that I think was due to Pochettino, who is no longer their manager. They parted mutually at the end of the season. But I think there's a lot of young talent there. I think they're still too inconsistent to mount really mount like a title challenge. But I do think they were playing better in the second half of the season, and I think with another year under their belts, that might be enough. I think Aston Villa is the easy choice, but I think Villa might struggle a little bit with the Champions League as an extra layer to their season. Chelsea's in the Conference League. Newcastle's another interesting shout, but they feel a little stagnant to me. Manchester United's made some additions, but I'm still not really buying them as being particularly good. And Spurs, I don't know. It's not actually a shot at Spurs. I just have a hard time picking them for 4th. So I'm going to say Chelsea squeezes in as number 4.
Okay. This is again just like kind of the familiarity with these teams and their records. Like I know who's been hot the last couple seasons. I mean, Liverpool seemed to kind of come out of nowhere as being like a real title contender last year, but not like nowhere, not like they're at the bottom of the table or something, but like they weren't in that conversation 2 seasons ago, I guess is what I mean. Like they weren't duking it out with us at the top like City was,
No, that's fair. But they had won the title like 2 years before that, and I get where you're coming from, and this is again your limited time horizon,
right?
But,
yeah. So, I mean, like in the short list, but obviously, like I imagine City is going to be in both of our top 4s. I think it would be unrealistic to say otherwise. I mean, I think for both of us as Arsenal fans and given their form, Arsenal is going to be in the top 4. So it's really who are going to be the other 2, right? So Chelsea, I don't know that I would necessarily pick Chelsea. Just kind of not entirely drawing names out of nowhere, but I don't know. I mean, I was watching a fictionalized version of them a lot. Let's say West Ham. They would have a lot of growth to get there.
That would be something to see West Ham. That's all I'll say. That would be something. Let me tell you something.
Okay,
if you're right, you can hold on to that one forever. Let me tell you. If you're right, you can hold on to that one forever.
In my mind, it's with Nate the Great coaching them. So, yeah. That he gets at the number 4. So, okay. So who's your number 3 pick?
Number 3, I'm going to say Liverpool. They still have an absurdly good roster. I think they kind of ran out of gas a little bit in the end of Klopp's final season. They have a new manager, Arne Slot, who's a Dutchman they got from PSV. he may be a good manager. He's not Klopp, but who is other than Klopp? But I think also like there's going to be an adjustment period. He's not the same manager, and I think there's going to be a slight adjustment. And given the level required to really be in that full title race, I think that might mean Liverpool starts a little slow. Now, by the end of the season, they might be the club that nobody wants a piece of. If it locks in for them, they're good enough to beat anybody, and they might be might make them a real serious contender in Europe, for example. It's just with the stakes, with what's necessary to win the Premier League, I think they'll end up in third.
Okay. Liverpool was what I was thinking, just based on form from last season going into this season. Like, it seems in lack of, Jurgen Klopp changing definitely is a big change. But as far as like player transfers, I haven't heard anything like really serious changing there. Like, I think they seem like a safe choice to still be in the top 3 for next year. So yeah, no arguments there. And so,
all right, now's where it gets fun. Number 2, who you got? Who are you putting in the 2 slot?
Well, I have to put City in the number 2 slot. I can't predict that they're going to be at the top and we're going to be at number 2 again, because I really, really don't want it to happen. And I really think, just like we did last year, like we have a really good shot. We really came so close. A few things happen a little bit differently, and we're there. Like we have the ability, and I really think that this is the year. So I'm putting City at number 2, number 2. What do you say?
I would love to believe that. And let me say, I'm okay with it playing out this way if you can give me a deep run in the FA Cup, or especially into the Champions League. But it's so hard for me to say. And I think we are getting better. It's just, you have to be perfect. And I'm just, I can't. This is the lower the expectations, the greater the glory. But I gotta put us at 2. I gotta say Arsenal's number 2.
Okay.
Which means we'll skip ahead there. Champions,
right? More or less a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. Like, let's say this: the one time in the last few years City has been beaten, it involved like Liverpool won something like of 27 of their first 28 games. Like, that's a stupid record. But obviously I'm just kidding about this. City is getting relegated because the 115 charges are going to go through and they're going to be botched down to League One, and actually Newcastle win the league. No, I'm kidding. That's not going to happen. I think as long as Pep's there, unless the Premier League really drops the hammer on them in some way, in terms of points, I feel like I need to really see it happen before I can see it happening. So I'm going to disgruntledly take City. I'm going to disgruntledly do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see us doing noticeably better in the cup tournaments, but I do want to see us go really far in the Champions League. Like, hopefully we get to the semis, let's say, at least next year. But no, I think this is the year. I think this is the year that we're going to do it. I think that we can do it. Hopefully that, these last couple pieces come into place. We have Raya all season. We have a couple other new players, maybe Calafiore, maybe other ones that they haven't finished finalizing yet or whatever. I think my uneducated wish is that it'll be us. So,
I mean, I love the optimism of youth. I'm just going to say.
Yeah, I'm so much younger than you. But as far as Arsenal fandom is, I guess I am a babe in the woods.
As you said, I've got close to 20 years of not winning to condition me to this. Yeah. So. And we're all gonna look silly. Well, you're gonna look brilliant when it is West Ham, but we're all gonna look silly when it's Crystal Palace walking away with the title. So
yeah. All right. So you ready for dessert?
Yeah, let's do it. Nice and sweet. And I think sweet's the good word. Adidas this morning officially released the third kits for a number of their teams. But the only one we care about is Arsenal. So the Arsenal third kit is out. What do you think?
Yeah, so I am pulling it up right now. I briefly saw it in an email from Arsenal this morning, but didn't really study it. It wasn't surprising. The colors, like we've seen their training gear in emails and in marketing materials for a while, are kind of similar. But oh wow, so there's a lot more purple in that than I thought there was from my brief glimpse of the email. Interesting. Not in love with it. Of course, kits have a history of growing on me. But my first impression when it first looked like it was more or less that teal color all over, it just kind of looked more like a training shirt than a real jersey. I don't know if the weird purple line shapes make that more or less. I do like the throwback Adidas logo. That's cool. I like when they use the 3 leaves instead of the 3 lines. I like the kind of mountain peak one that they prefer these days. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're right. The original mock-ups, which of course were really just predictions because they had a sense of the colors, did look like training tops, which, it's fair. They kind of did. On some level, this should be everything I don't like about an Arsenal kit, but I kind of like it. Yeah. Not enough to go buy one, but I don't know. There's something about it I kind of like. I can't quite put into words what it is, but something about it kind of works for me. Again, I'm a traditionalist. Red with white sleeves. I don't love this year's home kit because it's got too much white on it. All the panel on the sides is a little much for me. The away kit, the black is fine. I prefer yellow and then a blue for a third, a nice blue for a third. So maybe this is kind of bluish. So this is kind of a little closer to my alley.
They took away the yellow for the home kit or for the away kit. I mean, for this season.
Yeah,
so.
They had that kind of green and a mint colored one a couple of years ago, which was relatively popular. I don't know, something about it. The more I see it, the more I kind of like it. Again, not quite. Again, I don't have to go get one, but I like it. I have to say, I do kind of like it. And that's the more traditionalist speaking. So.
All right. Well. There was this video you wanted me to watch. Should we?
We'll save that. We'll save that for another time.
Save it for next week. Okay. I have not watched it yet. We'll save that for next time. All right. So, what's coming up next week?
Next week it's Arsenal. We've got our Arsenal back. We're gonna play Wolves on Saturday. Home game, season opener. Enjoy the sunshine in North London. Because this is England, and within a couple of weeks it'll just be gray all the time. I'm kidding. It can be nice there, but yes, home against Wolves to open the season. Let's the only way to win 27 of your first 28 is to win the first one. So, or the best way to do it, I should say, is win the first one. So let's go out, get 3 points, and get started with a bang.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to share one of our videos, either this one or a short. And yes, if you're paying attention, we didn't do shorts last time. Sorry, we forgot. But share one with a friend. Show them the show, see if they like it, and hopefully we get a new viewer, a new listener. Thanks again to our sponsor, Zencastr. And you can check out our description for links to everything we talk about, including our sponsor and our Instagram and Twitter pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
North London forever.